Fortunately, the winter of 1893 was mild, without the sub-zero temperatures at night and the snowstorms, which usually at this time of year close in upon Grand Gulch in an icy grip. Richard and his companions worked steadily in the sand and rubble of the caves. At Christmas there was a week interruption when all of the men rode to Bluff City for a celebration arranged by elders of the Mormon Church. Their invitation had come through Bob Allen. By early March they were digging in the vicinity of the natural bridges, graceful stone arches formed by erosion. These they encountered where the gulch narrows to an impassable gap before dropping off into the San Juan River. The men were 30 miles below Grand Canyon, where they had entered Grand Gulch, and had worked out more than 100 caves. The method of excavation Richard used in Cottonwood Wash and Grand Gulch, digging through the cliff dweller level of human remains to the older basket maker level, and drawing conclusions about the relative place in prehistory of both by comparison of what he found, were a simple application of modern stratigraphic technique. Stratigraphy is based on the principle that the oldest remains of a civilization, by the process of time and accumulation, will be found buried deepest under the ground surface. Each layer of debris above the bottom progressively indicates a later period in the life of any village, the top layer of refuse naturally being the last before the site was abandoned or destroyed. By comparison of these successive layers of debris and their relationship in time with findings in other localities, archaeologists have been able to piece together many parts of the puzzle of how people of the past have lived. The thoroughness of his work, combined with shrewd observation, brought Richard close to the basic methods of most stratigraphic excavation. In the refuse mounds of San Cristobal ruin of Galisteo Basin, Nels C. Nelson first developed the technique in 1914, and so effectively that Alfred Vincent Kidder immediately afterward employed the same methods at Pecos Pueblo. Both men have acknowledged the importance of Richard's contribution, and John C. McGregor, in his Southwestern archaeology, observed, "So far as known at present, Richard Wetherill was the first to make use of natural stratigraphy as applied to archaeological problems in the Southwest. From his work in western San Juan, he established the basket maker culture stage as a distinct form, earlier than that of the later Pueblo people." Richard had intended to extend his work to the vicinity of Navajo Mountain, several days to the southwest, but approaching spring made his plan impractical. His notes show that some work was done in Allen Canyon, high in the foothills of Abajo Mountains, and down through Butler Wash, which runs parallel to and just west of Cottonwood Wash. As in the case of Longhouse, Poncho House, on the Chenal, his notes do not tell at what stage he and his party reached the places. No help is supplied either in determining the route to the expedition by cataloging the collection, since the artifacts were not numbered entirely in the order of their discovery. It is certain, however, that Richard did not get as far south as Marsh Pass and Chaco Canyon, as some have believed. After 4 months in the field, Richard disbanded his party at Bluff City in March. The 1,216 relics packed out by Multane had been stored temporarily in Bluff, and now were loaded on wagons and taken to the Alamo Ranch. When he reached there, Richard spent about 2 months working over the collection, sorting out and cataloging the material before crating it for shipment by rail from Durango to New York. In the fall of 1895, the collection was presented by Talbot and Fred Hyde to the American Museum of Natural History. Most of these relics now lie uncrated and in storage, but a number are displayed in the Southwest Hall as the first Wetherill collection, made by Richard Wetherill about 1890. Just how much the expedition cost the Hyde brothers is not certain, although $3,000 would be a reasonable estimate. Early in the season, Richard reported that the January bill for wages and materials totaled only $450. Expenses for March, he told Hyde, will be less. For all extra men, you are paying at a rate of $20 per month each and board, and you must rest assured they are working for it. The extra men were Indians. 2 were the most engaged at one time, so the party never numbered more than 10 men. The other men received somewhat more than the $20 paid to the Indians, while Richard received about $25 a week, but never more than $100 a month. He tried to keep expenses down, even furnishing 3 pack mules of his own and horses for all the men. "Tell me how much you want to put into this work," he wrote Talbot, "as I will work accordingly. I mean this, that I want you to get the largest collection possible in the time allowed with money that you have for that purpose." Talbot Hyde made no complaint, but he was so slow in forwarding checks that Richard had to remind him several times that the men were working without pay and the expedition was badly in debt. Eventually, the money arrived, but not before Richard was driven into a quiet frenzy over how he could keep going and settle bills for supplies bought on expectation. Thus, he wrote Talbot on February 4th, "The check reached the ranch, but did not get here, Bluff City. I wish, if you could, to send to the First National Bank at Durango $150 to be placed to my credit. The balance, if you can, placed to the credit of B.K. Wetherill." This might indicate that Richard had to borrow from his father to meet his payments. And on March 20th, again from Bluff, "I have now laid most of the outfit off until I can hear from you." Bluff was booming with gold fever, Richard informed Hyde. While his men were waiting to be paid, they staked claims along the San Juan and tried their luck placer mining. A hard day's work, but no harder than working in the caves of Grand Gulch, producing gold dust worth $5 over the counter, or 5 times as much as they were earning. Catching some of the fever himself, Richard suggested to Hyde that, "If you care for a claim, I'll locate one for you and do the assessment work." Hyde finally sent a check, and Richard wrote on March 28th, "Yours received. As I wrote you before I laid the boys off until I heard about funds, I'm very glad to have received the money just now, as I am getting in desperate circumstances. I would not have felt it so much, but we lost $2,500 last fall at the ranch, or rather didn't make it on account of an early frost, but I don't grieve over it. I'm in the field where I like to work and have no thought of anything else, but it is necessary to have supplies. I have now paid up so that my credit is restored. I had over $300 to pay off here in Bluff." A rancher, digging a well in Montezuma Valley not far from Mancos, stumbled accidentally upon a cache of human bones. It happened just in time to provide an unexpected climax to the first season of Hyde exploring expedition. The rancher, named Snyder, started digging in what appeared to be a natural depression in the ground. The hole reached a depth of 2 feet when Snyder's shovel turned up a human bone. Continuing to dig, Snyder went through another 2 feet of earth and more bones when he realized he had struck a mass burial pit. He stopped work on the well and wrote to Richard, whom he knew to be in or near Bluff, describing what he had found. Richard replied he would be passing that way within a short time and asked Snyder to wait for his arrival. The ranch was southwest of Aztec Springs, near the Yucca House group of ruins. When Richard and his brothers, Al and John, reached Snyder's place about the 1st of April, they saw at once the natural depression chosen for the well actually indicated one of the kivas associated with ancient Pueblo. By tracing the kiva's perimeter, Richard and his brothers marked off a circle 21 feet in diameter and began digging within the area. Nothing but a few pottery sherds were found until they reached a depth of 8 feet. At that level, the top of the kiva's buried masonry wall was encountered. From that point on, Wetherill's proceeded even more cautiously, so their shovels would not damage the thin layers of adobe plaster still adhering to the inner wall surfaces. 7 thicknesses of plaster were peeled off, one at a time, revealing 4 layers that had been painted in different colors. The first color in earth red, the second white, the third green, the fourth red ochre. In following the wall's contour, they uncovered 8 masonry pilasters, spaced at equal intervals and resting on a masonry bench encircling the room a few feet above floor level. Architecturally similar to the kivas they examined before in the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde. Otherwise, however, it was unusual for being one of the first painted kivas found anywhere in the San Juan region. All of these details Richard described in a letter 2 months later to Moorhead, the archaeologist, adding that at a depth of 10 feet we came upon a mass of skeletons that had originally been thrown into the room in a haphazard manner. All of the skulls saved had each a hole in it, such as would have been made by striking it with a stone axe. Of 25 specimens examined, all proved to be of cliff dweller type, having the perpendicular flattening of the back of the skull. The skulls from the regular burial mounds in the vicinity have the oblique flattening upon the back of the head, showing there must have been some distinction made between the races. We infer that this discovery the skeletons must have been prisoners or captives, and killed or thrown into this estufa. 4 months of Richard's work for the Hyde brothers would not begin to replace the loss the Alamo Ranch had suffered the previous fall from frost damage. Yet he had had the opportunity to be in the field, where I like to work and have no thought for anything else. Besides, he discovered the basket makers and added immeasurably to the knowledge which would be useful to him in the next few years.
And I feel like New York City. Get me to the farm. Get me to the farm. Get me to the farm.